Welcome to Cash Flow and Chaos, the real estate podcast where ROI meets WTF.
I'm Chad, checking in from the rainy streets and hot market of Washington State.
Kate, holding it down in southern New Hampshire where the flips are fast and the tenants are interesting.
Each week, we bring you market updates, money moves, and the madness behind the deals.
Because every property has a little drama.
Learn from the chaos and build the cash flow.
Hi guys, welcome back to Cash Flow and Chaos. Today we're breaking down the real difference between deal killers and deal savers in episode 5. Because not every ugly deal is a bad deal and not every easy deal is safe. Some problems will absolutely bury you, such as foundation issues, chaotic sellers, zoning surprises, bad tenant situations, and plenty of others. Others, they'll just look scary on paper, but they can be fixed with better numbers, better terms, or a smart exit strategy. So in this episode, we're talking about what instantly makes us uncomfortable, which red flags beginners love to argue with or ignore, what can actually be renegotiated, and when walking away is the smartest move you'll ever make. So if you ever tried to force the deal to work, this one's for you. Before we jump in, if you're serious about buying your next deal with the right way, we put together a free investor checklist that walks you through exactly what we look for before we close. So you can grab it at cashflowandchaos.com/investor-checklist. Free, and it'll save you from rookie mistakes.
So, Kate, what instantly makes you feel uncomfortable when looking at a deal?
Definitely foundation or any structural issues. Those could be major. So I would always get a professional over there to give us an estimate about what it might take to solve the issue. Sometimes it might be something simple, but I feel like with structural or foundation, a lot of times it could be a very big expense. Something that might look like a tiny little crack to us could be like something major failing that we wouldn't recognize because we're not a foundation expert. At least I'm not. Seller behavior that predicts chaos. For example, there was a 4-family I was looking to buy, and one of the sellers would answer the door drunk, high all the time. And it was just like, it was actually almost 2 years I was working that lead until I finally said enough's enough, Some like back to, cutting your losses. I probably should have walked away for a while, but I had previously, but for a while I was just like, well, if I just keep at it and, eventually they'll sell. But sometimes it's like, I started losing my mind on that one because they were just stringing me along for months. And then at the end, the other brother that owned part of it jumped in and he was going to sell to me. And then they used my documents to try to sell it to someone else. So by my documents, I mean, I put together like a wholesaler finance a line and then a cash offer. So I had 2 different offers with all the documentation. And then they ended up locking it up with my seller financing with one of their friends. So he apparently, yeah, I mean, whatever. So he apparently couldn't end up closing because he lost a bunch of money in Bitcoin. So that was his deposit amount, I guess. So they ended up keeping it, and then he circled back with me and asked me if I wanted to manage the property for him, which I politely declined because it was just a complete disaster. And I mean, it just, the only way it could have possibly been worth it is if I owned the property. So that was the only really way I was willing to deal with the part owner brother that was going to remain there, wanted to remain there. So otherwise, it was too much trouble. Other ones are, make me uncomfortable with the deal would be like zoning or use restrictions, especially HOAs. I already have like, federal government, state government, local government, who wants also an HOA telling you, you can't put that flower pot there or whatever else. So I really just don't like HOAs. I think, Chad, you mentioned earlier like some story you had.
Yeah, so I'm currently building a house in an HOA, so that'll be awesome. But I did, before we ever signed any paperwork or put a deposit down on the house, like I read through the CCRs and all the rules and all that shit. So
So
they're,
like how many are gonna break from day one?
yeah. Like you're only
You're getting
allowed,
kicked out.
they're definitely going to try to lien the property probably before I sell with the backcode fines and shit. And the lawn's pretty tiny. Like right now, I'm on an acre and a quarter, acre and a quarter, acre and a half, and I got a 1,800 square foot shop. And we'll be going to like a third of an acre with a 3-car garage. So that'll be interesting. Selling all my shit for projects, all my hobby project stuff, and just keeping all my tools and shit strictly just for real estate. If I have to jump in, if Melissa and I have to jump in to save a deal, we will. But I'm gonna lean on subs. And reverting to your question about one of my first houses, it was in a development, but the HOA had since dissolved, so there was still no rules or regulations or anything, but it was still in a community. And well, you don't have to go. You got to handle your problems yourself, especially as an adult. So there was this guy that was testing out his quad and ripping around the neighborhood like third gear wide open. After it was like a half hour to oh fuck, I want a beer. Oh, oh no, it's just a Red Bull.
Hashtag sponsor.
But the guy would like we talked to him once and then he kept doing it. So my buddy and I were like, fuck this. This is my army buddy, he's my squad leader and my roommate. So we just grabbed a 3 to 5 pound box of nails. And next time the guy was coming, we just kind of waved at him, chucked the fucking box of nails in the street. He stopped. He's like, really? And we're like, yeah. We asked you nicely, and he pretty much told us, fuck you, so fuck you back. And then we threw him out there. We had a magnet roller, so once he went home and parked his quad and quit being a jackass, then we magnet swept all the screws out and made sure nobody was gonna get flat tires. Modern problems require modern solutions. Don't do what I do. Do what you can afford to do.
So entertainment purposes only. These are just hypothetical situations that may or may not have happened. So which red flags do beginners argue the most, you think?
Oh, that's not that bad. I could fix it. Um, and that's true. Like maybe you can fix it. Maybe you're a contractor, but a lot of people don't justify or they don't account for what their time is worth. Like, yeah, I can rebuild this whole house. When I was doing contracting, I charged $200 an hour. If I can't do that on my own project, why am I gonna do that task that might be a $40, $50 an hour task versus something that's going to produce 200 or more dollars an hour or whatever your time may be worth. That's the way I look at stuff. And then overconfidence in the renovation ability, like a newer investor, like, oh, it's not that bad. We could totally do this, but like, calm down, shut the fuck up. You probably shouldn't start with a fire damaged property or full gut that you got to rework the floor plan on for your first deal. Like, especially if you have no background in construction, no go-to subcontractor crews. Like, no, it's fine. We're just gonna hire this GC. Like, yeah, they're gonna clean you out. Like, they're gonna see and catch on. It's pretty evident when you don't know what you're talking about or don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, this house we live in now was a full gut. We got it at auction, and I mean, we had contractors coming in. They were like looking around, like they were scared. Like, most of them were like, "Well, no, this is too big for us," or they're like, "Yeah, we'll get you an estimate," and then they like wouldn't get back to me when I tried calling them. They couldn't estimate it. Like Dan has experience in the trades, and we both had good jobs, so we weren't really worried because we're like, if worse comes to worse, we'll be fine. But yeah, I don't recommend that on your first, especially if you don't have somebody, either yourself or a partner, that's really good with the trades, because like Dan was here like pulling what's that, wool, like sheep's wool. It
Well,
was for insulation stuff out of the attic and stuff, and he was, what I mean, it was like a super old house, so he was very hands-on with it and, managing the project, so that's super helpful. But if you have no clue, like, you could totally, even if you could pay somebody to do it, you don't really know yet what you're looking for and what's a good job either. So they might say, and to this day still, I have so many contractors that will finish the job and they're still in like the driveway of whatever project we have going on, and they'll call me like, all right, I got to get paid. And I'm like, well, I'm going to check the project first. And they'll be like, well, we did what was asked. I'm like, I really respectfully don't care because I'm going to check it. And almost every freaking time we go to check it, It's like, oh, look at this huge gap in the floor. Oh, this window's cracked. That literally, both those scenarios happened to me literally last week. Both of them were like, can you pay me right now? And I'm like, no, we're gonna go check the project first. Send me an invoice. Can I have like 12 hours? You know what I mean? They just, and like when they want to rush you like that, it's almost like they know they did a shit job and they want to get paid before you have a chance to check it. So especially in those situations where I'm being pressured, then I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Sometimes if they were to just send me an invoice, I'd be like, oh, I know their work, I'm just gonna pay it. But when they're calling me up needing money, I'm like, what's going on? I'm going to look at it first. And 9 times out of 10, there's like something that they need to go back on, and that's fine. Like most contractors we have are like pretty upstanding. They're gonna go back and fix it if they have to, but are they gonna fix it first thing tomorrow because they want their money, or did you already pay them and they have another job to get to? So now they're going to go work on that. So you want to be able to not to say like hold money over their head, but you want that leverage to be able to get them to go back because they're waiting on their money. So I don't like to just quickly pay anyone. I like to pay them expeditiously. Like, I don't want my people to be waiting on their money, but it's not going to be while they're in the driveway unless I get to see
Yeah.
the work.
No, for sure. And then you were talking about something also for red flags or about tenant issues or earlier.
Which one?
The like you were underestimated a potential tenant issue or legal dispute.
Um,
No, you don't remember? That's
Okay,
all right.
here, I do remember. Yeah, so there was one, like, so you want to make sure you know, like, what's going on with the building. So we had one building where we had a tenant that was getting evicted, and we were doing something super minor in another unit, like fixing the ceiling or something. So they called the EPA and they were like complaining about us. They were calling the city, like they were calling anybody they could to try to get people on our ass. We were doing everything we were supposed to, like Dan's RRP certified and all that, which you need to if you're disturbing anything. It's 6 square feet of drywall, whatever. But it still gets your blood going. You're still getting like, oh no, why is the EPA? EPA is like a scary word because their fines could be like 38 grand a day if you're doing something wrong. So, I mean, they did do an investigation. They're fine with, what we were doing. We did it correctly, so it wasn't a big deal. But you always want to make sure, like, if you could find out like what has gone on with the building previously. So, if like there's someone that's got an agency that's maybe had been watching the building or there was issues before. We've had a tenant that we inherited that turned out to be a pedophile. So those are all like risk scenarios. If, for example, you don't know that and you're going to rent, you list your apartment for rent. I mean, that's all public in a public database. So you're going to potentially lose out on renters who want to live there, especially if they have like a small child, because now they're looking at that as, they don't want to live in that building. So those are all like I would say like indirect issues that you or red flags that you want to know about and kind of dig a little bit deeper than just the surface level of like do the numbers work, like what's the area, what's going on with the building, has there been any previous issues that you, and it's not even necessarily going to kill the deal, it's just you want to do some risk mitigation going forward with those, with whatever the issue is.
Yeah, for sure. And then what problems do you notice over time can tend to get worse if not corrected?
Just being unorganized or disorganized, like not having like your checklist, your scope of work, and not building systems as you go. Um, I think as you go, when you see problems, if you could try to automate or get a system implemented every single time you do another project, you're going to be a little bit better off. So it might not be building an entire system from day one before you've ever done anything, but it's as you go and you get experience, you can see where you could you know, get better at certain areas and building out your systems. With bad tenant situations, for example, when I visited that potential property and the guy opened the door with a gun, didn't want to deal with me, that's something that, is going to get worse over time. So I'm probably like walking away from those certain deals. Um,
And then another one's like just neighborhood decline signals too. Like I'll use a neighborhood over here as example. When you turn the street, now you can see a little crack that, like in Washington. It's very common because you can get RVs for free off Facebook Marketplace and that shit. So you'll see like little crackhead RVs parked along the shoulder of the street wherever they can fit in, they get in, and then they just use the outside surrounding of the RV as their dumpster. So like there's just a fucking
Well,
pile of trash around the RV. Um, and then they just pull off and they go park somewhere else and do it again over and over again. Um, and you'll like out here we'll have a couple different metal scrap yards, and then all the junkies and stuff will stay in the surrounding neighborhoods and streets on the sides to be able to steal your shit and then go recycle it the next morning.
oh my God.
So you always get a little petty theft and all that shit around there. It tends to be. You're pretty good at picking out neighborhoods, aren't you, Kate?
No, I need Dan. I still can't figure this one out. I'm gonna admit some weaknesses. So I, for some reason, end up buying houses next to sober living houses. So yeah, my tenants don't love that. There's a lot more activity in a sober living house if you're familiar with them at all. Definitely like 9 times out of 10, every single person at least smokes cigarettes, which whatever, it's legal, but they're like always outside. It kind of brings that more, riffraff type of situation. Like potentially there's, drug deals going on and whatnot. I don't know. I'm typically like a glass half empty person, but when it comes to neighborhoods, apparently I'm glass half full because I'm like, this doesn't look bad to me. What's the matter? Dan's like, oh, that guy over there just got robbed, and that building's all tagged up, and that one's boarded up. I'm like, I don't know, seems all right, So I need
Well, like,
Dan to kind of say, no, this neighborhood's not a good neighborhood to buy in. But also, if it's up and coming, you want to get in first. So I just like to
right.
say, I'm ahead of the curve.
Well, and another good sign too is like, wow, that person does just, judging by the way they look doesn't mean they're homeless. But when they're pissing uphill down a drain pipe and it's just running back onto them, there, something funny's going on. Just saying.
Yeah, chances are they are. So that whole section was basically about deal killers. Let's kind of turn the tables here and let's talk about if there's anything we can save. So, Chad, what looks bad on paper but might be possibly able to be fixed?
Your exit, it could be exit strategies depending on, maybe it was going to be a flip, but the market shifted or interest rates spiked. So now you're not going to be able to sell it for the profit. Maybe you're looking at a loss. You're like, how do I mitigate that? Like, cool. Maybe I can turn it into a bird. Maybe I can turn it into a midterm or short term. Um, reevaluating your scope of work and maybe going with a little bit lesser comps can sometimes drop your scope of work significantly. Instead of going with granite and quartz, maybe you can get away with laminate and just making, instead of new cabinets, maybe you can just change the hardware and paint them and maybe DIY it because that can take a weekend and just doing little stuff like that to reevaluate where you're at, where you got to get to, and what the numbers will dictate for you to do best as well.
Yeah, also like price, first terms, and timeline. So all those are adjustable to make the deal work. And I usually like I'll try to start there too. At the beginning just to say like, all right, so if I change maybe the length of the loan and increase it from 25 to 30 years, that's going to lower your monthly payment. So maybe in a DSCR type situation, that's going to make your ratio fit the correct parameters so that way the deal can work. Or maybe if you can buy down your rate a little bit, that will change the monthly payments. Also, you might be able to change your rental from a long-term rental to maybe a midterm rental and potentially get higher gross rents in that respect. So there are some ways that you can be flexible and look at things differently to make a deal work legally and, completely on the up and up. You just need to finagle or work through some of your numbers and see if, kind of pivoting on any of the different variables can get you where you need to be.
Well, and then Kate, when does renegotiation turn into desperation?
I would say when you're negotiating without leverage, so if you're the day before closing and you just decide that you don't want to pay the price, that's there you have no leverage. But if you're, for example, within the contingency due diligence time frame and you notice that there's like a hole in the roof and water leaking into one of the bedrooms, well, that's a completely legitimate reason to ask for a price reduction or ask that they fix the roof. So you want to make sure you have leverage to negotiate and not just, just ask for money back. Asking for too much too late, that would be like the situation I just mentioned where, you're at the closing table the day before closing and you're kind of getting cold feet and you want to start, trying to change the parameters of the deal. Like, no, we don't do that. Letting fear drive your concessions again to the cold feet. You don't want to just be scared and then start trying to kill the deal. You want to do your due diligence, you want to run the numbers, and you want to go with confidence to the closing. What would you say is a single assumption that can make or break a deal?
Adjust, kind of adjust, adjusting your rent expectations, like not just going off your quote unquote gut or feelings of what you think it might be worth because you made it pretty, but actual pulling your rental comps and seeing what the market's dictating that you could get for rents. Like, but I did find house one, two, and three that are 2,100 a month for rent. Like, yeah, but they've been sitting for 45 days listed, not getting rented out. Don't use those. Use the stuff that's going on market and then getting taken off within a few weeks or a month. Like this inventory that's actually moving, not just what hopes and dreams are people are shooting for.
Right.
In your financing, whether it's going with interest only loan if you need to save the deal, or and having an exit plan after the interest only period, like hey, we can do interest only for the first 3 to 5 years, and then we could switch to you know a DSCR loan or long term where it's paying down the principal. But also with that, being an adult and managing your credit score, which is our grown up report card, in my opinion, and pay your fucking bills on time so you can be as lendable as possible and get the best terms and rates that are out there. Because it's most people out here can, like, if you need help with a budget, like, it's not hard. It's not rocket science, but managing your monies and paying your bills to keep your score lendable is huge. And also revising your scope of work. Like, this isn't HGTV. Again, pull your comps. You need your comps for your resale value and the comps for what you can rent it for. Make sure they're kind of aligned, because your comps for the ARV might be, fancy tile bathrooms, stone countertops, and then all your rentals are like fucking laminate countertops, original cabinets with new hardware. Like two different things. You're not gonna get both. You got to see which one you're going with, and then look at comps that are going to support your rental amount as well for resale value, and just build to that.
Yeah.
Um, and Kate, why does most people feel walking away feels like a failure instead of a save or a win?
I would just say the scarcity mindset, feeling like you'll never find a deal. That happens. It's hard to find a deal, especially when you're starting out. You don't have as many connections with wholesalers or how to like run the numbers. Maybe you don't have enough subcontractors, so you're paying a higher price. So some of the deals that will work for people that have been in the industry longer might not work for you, but you just got to keep chugging at it. It's out there. Emotional attachment because you like the house or you really just want a deal. So, it could feel like a failure when you have to walk away from it, but at the end of the day, it needs to be about the numbers and not about your emotional status. And experience to the previous statement, just getting emotionally attached, but you have to remember it's just a deal and a numbers game at the end of the day. Chad, what do you say walking away will save you long term?
Mental status. But no, for real, it'll like you can you're gonna feel a little bad walking away from a deal, like at least for me. But it's a hell of a lot better than the mental strain you're gonna go through trying to force it to work. And then because shit's gonna go like it's not gonna go better after you force the deal to close. It's just gonna steadily snowball into a bigger shit show. And not only, like you'd mentioned before, like it's not just us as the investor, it's also who we're close to with our family and friends, isn't it? Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
vendors, your husband or wife, I mean, it's gonna cause a lot of personal relationship strain if you were wanting to make a deal work that you knew from the start wasn't going to work, well, now you're trying to push your vendors into giving you better prices, and that's going to cause strain because they're not going to be able to, you know what I mean? It's a snowball effect, and what do they say? Shit rolls downhill. So you're going to be asking your vendors to, cut corners, maybe how are you going to make it work? Your budget's going to be tighter. You're not going to want to pay them. They're going to get mad. They're going to want to work with other people who aren't going to give them as hard of a time. Like, obviously negotiate, but if it's such a bad deal that you should have walked away and you just bought it on emotion, now you're going to be bringing everybody else in your circle into that turmoil.
yeah, and it's easy to walk away and try and go find another deal and put the money back to work instead of
Yeah.
sinking it and potentially losing all of it.
Yeah.
Um,
All right, well, that wraps episode 5, Deal Killers and Deal Savers. And if you're serious about building cash flow instead of just consuming content, which we love, thank you, go to cashflowandchaos.com/investor dash checklist and grab our free investor checklist. It's the exact system we use before every deal. Get it, use it, and start investing smarter. Again, we're always here for any questions you might have. And join us on the next episode where we talk about contractors and how investors can get burned. Bye.